Well, hello everyone. My name is Somia Das. I am a senior CRM consultant with Avanade and being a human in AI space. Welcome everyone to the Global XR Conference 2023. And this time I've come up with a topic with Realitycraft, designing for generative world building. I've got my keynote speaker who's very special. So I'll probably bring her on stage. Hello, Evo.
Hello. I think we have an
Hello.
overlay, but once we take the overlay off, everyone will see as well.
All
Hi.
right. Sorry about that. Hello.
Yeah, great to see you. I'm
Good to see you
great.
too.
Nice to see you. I'm coming today from Ohio.
Oh, that's good. So Evo Heining is already famous for Evo's reality cast. She is the author of Promptcraft and the upcoming book on this topic, Realitycraft, which is also the name of her design lab in the Bay Area, California.
Yes.
She has been an interactive and immersive producer for about 25 years. That's amazing. So, Realitycraft specializes in creating immersive worlds using a variety of art and technology tools. And Evo also teaches you how to do the same with AI design and extended reality world building. I'm already excited, energetic, and ready for the topic. Evo, hand over to you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you at the Global XR Conference and to our asynchronous audience on YouTube and such as well. Welcome. We're going to bring in my slides and then I'm going to just talk you through a process that I have been using in my own creative and generative work. I will say that the process that we're going to walk through today is inquiry-based, and it is an evolving work in progress as I am working on a book on this process now. But it's also designed to help you and your creative community or your team think big about the kinds of questions you need to be asking yourselves. And this is all the way through the design process, but especially as you're just getting started and throughout ideation. So let's see if I can make sure my slides are working so smoothly today. So again, as she mentioned, I wrote a book earlier this year called Promptcraft. I'm currently finishing up the second edition, so that will be available for you in a few months. Promptcraft is available on Amazon, and it specifically goes into generative media and how to begin forming your own prompt for all of these different tools. Now, there are like 2,400 generative media tools listed out there if you go to a place like Future Tools.io today. So it is a rapidly growing space, and it is very challenging to sometimes keep up with where are the tools and how do you use them effectively as part of a broader process. So we're here to talk about XR and world building. But we're especially going to talk about the kinds of questions you need to be asking yourselves when you go into mixing maybe your traditional media methods with generative world design. So again, my name is Evo Haining. I've been doing this for about 25 years. I've done it in the public sector. I worked for example, during the Obama administration, I worked for the State Department doing global diplomacy in XR back in 2009. So I've been building virtual worlds for nonprofits and for communities for over, 18 years, I think it is, and previously worked in other types of gaming and interactive media, as well as immersive design for theater and physical places. So all of the types of design that we're engaging in XR are bringing together these elements, right? And Realitycraft, what we're going to describe today, it is a game, it's a process, it's a design lab, as she mentioned, in California and gallery, where all of you can begin to tap into your own existing creative work and bring it together to form new types of worlds, a new reality that is a shared experience for other people. Now, that might be a WebXR experience, that might be an app or a product, something in AR, it might be art, right? And so we're going to talk through the process of forming from the first idea all the way through forming your prompts and then going into production on those elements and assets. So Promptcraft, just to define this very quickly, is a process to realize that vision that you're holding in your head and design your generative creative works. Now, we are going to speak about multimodal generative media. Now, that is AI art. I don't particularly like those terms. I find that is it's a bit of a misnomer. We're not talking about something artificial, nor are we talking about something intelligent. So I will generally be speaking about generative tools as a subsect of machine learning and the greater AI space. I just wanted to give you that preface so that you're not confused. Generative media refers to tools like Midjourney. It also refers to some of the LLMs, the large language models. And we're going to talk about some of the different underlying technologies, but especially how you can learn to really speak directly to these tools and get what you're trying to create out of them. So when, excuse me. Apologies. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of colds, and that's what we're going to do today. So, Promptcraft, when you are designing your prompt, you are specifically working with words, images, and numbers. One more. I'm going to leave a note, and I hope that you will leave comments in YouTube as well. My voice is obviously not where it should be today, so I'm going to do my best to keep going. And we are going to potentially invite all of you to come to a workshop where we can do this in a more in-depth way down the road. So Promptcraft includes words, it includes images, and it might include numbers or even emoji. It includes a wide variety of assets and inspirations. So when you are thinking about your own Promptcraft, it is a practice of iterative generative design. Iterative, meaning that you are iterating at every step. Generative, we are using these generative media tools, but you are designing something that is unique for you and your community. Realitycraft is also a practice of iterative generative design. So you are going to keep practicing these tools. It is also world design. experience design, community design, interaction design, designing for accessibility, diversity, and especially making sure that you are designing something that is ethical and appropriate for your community or for the participants you're inviting in. So just to step back, I've been designing worlds, but I've also designed a band using these methods. And we're going to talk a little bit about the generative media process of designing a multimedia project like a band that also will be going into XR. This is a little brief. So this is my video. I'm going to turn this up just a moment here. So I wanted you to be able to see how the process of world building might start with an image or a series of images, and then it might become music, it might become multimodal, it might become video, it might become a wide variety of world assets that you end up bringing together to create a cohesive experience. This particular sampler of our music is for the upcoming album. And what we're doing is we're blending different styles using about 30 different generative tools. The music itself is from our band, and I have some amazing bandmates who are in the studio now actually finishing the album. But when it comes to how we work with generative media, it is on the visuals and the visualizers here, these animated aspects, for character design, and we even generate our voices using tools called 11 Labs for generative media. So I wanted you to see just a little bit of how something might go from an early concept. We started the band in March. We began writing the album, and then this fall I began making the visualizers. We're going to skip ahead. I don't have time to share with you everything, unfortunately, but I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to go to Oracles AI. The band is Oracles, and Oracles is working. So when you're thinking about Realitycraft, that broad process, you're inviting people into something. It is not just about you, it's often about your end participants. And you're also thinking about what is human and what is delightful and what is joyful, right? So you're combining often old art and new art, old ideas and new ideas, and figuring out how you're going to do that cohesively as a part of the process. So we're going to go through each step of these one by one together. And I want you to be able to break down. These are the chapters of the book, and they also go through some of the big inquiry questions that you need to be asking when you are maybe just starting out on a new XR project. Maybe you're rebuilding a world that has existed for some time. Maybe you're creating a new type of product, or maybe you're thinking about making a band, a character, or something new like a chatbot that has a world attached to it. So all of these questions we're going to unpack together as part of the process. So let's start with world design, because many of us in XR are world creators. I started out making virtual worlds in 2004-5, and then starting in 2006, started making those into participatory art experiences that included sometimes social impact campaigns or other types of ways to engage with the public. Image generation, and this is from Midjourney, from a campaign recently on the public side. Image generation is a big part of where we start. So I frequently start in a tool such as Midjourney because I'm able to really play with it like a media, like a sculptural tool. And I can play enough to really start to get some flow and to try new things. So these kinds of images, for example, come from being able to bring things together and then blend and merge and play with the images over and over again until I get to a new art style or a new process that I like. So let's start off with R of Realitycraft. The reason. Why are you creating this experience? What is your purpose? Can you describe its essential elements? Like, what is the minimum viable product for that global XR experience that you want to create? And then what feelings does this world or experience evoke? So these are often great purpose questions to start with. Maybe you're working with a couple of people, maybe you're doing this internally within your company or your organization, but these are the kinds of things where starting with purpose and the reason for your work can help make the reality, the shared reality you're building, more real for everyone down the road. So we're going to talk about all of that ideation that happens when we go into the questions. Like the big purpose questions will often give you a couple of keywords. So I know I want to make a wonderful, awe-inspiring, spectacular experience. Those are words that I will end up putting in my prompt craft in order to bring those emotions forward. So when I'm going into an image generator, I am usually putting a mix of these characters to speak to these 5 elements. And that includes content type, meaning what type of media am I making at the end? And that might look like saying character design or poster or die cut sticker or something in 3D as well. And many image generators can begin to create aspects of 3D, but aren't necessarily able to generate a full 3D mesh. We are starting to see 3D generating image tools as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So content type. Description, this is like a scenic description or a character description. Style, this includes your art style or any words that might speak to things like your palette, even your lighting. And then things like composition, these are stage directions or maybe a camera angle. These are going to help with any image generator especially, but also in a video generator to be able to create a layout that's going to work for you in your storytelling or in your experience design. And then parameters. Parameters include things like aspect ratio, what we call chaos and style, which might give you more sort of randomness or uniqueness in the art that you're creating. And so that's what this looks like in Midjourney. You're going to maybe put a couple of images that you're using for inspiration. Maybe they're your own artwork from 20 years ago, like what I'm doing with the band. Text prompt, that's all of those words that speak to the content, the style, the description of what I'm looking for. And then at the end, I'm putting the parameters saying, I don't want farms in my image, but I do want an aspect ratio and this specific information there. So that is how we begin the process of generating a basic image, right? And this is how people will go through something like a portrait study or a character design. And these are the basic building blocks. When we're starting a new XR build, it will sometimes be thousands of images in order to create what we would think of as training sets for each character, sometimes each asset of the world, as well as things like skyboxes or environments or walls in the scene itself. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. There are a lot of image generators out there, both free and open source. So I'm going to encourage you to try those on your own time. But when you're making your first collection, there are a couple of great tips to try out. For example, keep iterating and remixing, and maybe make 200, 300, 400 images just to get to the kinds of ideas you're looking for. So these images are for a build that we're going to talk about in this talk for the XR Guild. And XR Guild is an organization that I happen to be the vice president of the board of, but we're in the process of designing a new guild building, a library that serves the XR industry. So that WebXR Guild Hall and library needs to feel like something new and unique. And so we've been designing things like stained glass windows to go in there. So when I'm going into the process of designing a stained glass window, that's basically what we call an image prompt, in making these images into something that I can then bring into my XR build in Unity or some other design tool. So this is a process that I might repeat thousands of times. Maybe I'm trying to do this for lots of different characters in some cases, or in the case of the XR Guild building, I have 12 stained glass windows to create. And I might want them to look like a real person, or I might want them to look like a fictionalized being. These are some of the methods. And I wanted you to see the actual prompt craft here, because in tools like Midjourney, you can even use the native language of the type of person person or place that you are trying to evoke. So you can be very creative with the types of characters you're using. If English isn't your native language, this is a Global XR conference. I want you to feel comfortable and safe to try these tools, whether you are speaking Arabic or Spanish. All of those tools come together in part because we fine tune what's happening with those parameters at the end and what we call algorithmic modifiers. I shorten this to algo mods when I'm giving a workshop, but algorithmic modifiers are how you really fine tune your artistry. And this is where the human aspects of prompt craft are vitally important, because when you're going through generative design, you are going to need to do a lot of fine tuning to make sure it's appropriate for all of the people you're creating for, right? So that might mean being extra careful about how you're reflecting things like diversity as well. Thinking about every texture in your building could potentially be a tile that speaks to the history, the heritage of your community or your place. So these are all different ways that you can think about whether it's recreating a physical world that you've been to before or creating an entirely fictional world, right? A whole new reality. These are all sort of tools at your disposal so that you can create that can of hoop-ass in this case. I do this as a joke, but in product design classes, we use tools like this is Ideogram. Ideogram and DALL-E 3 can do text in generators better than most. So you can do, for example, fictional posters that look like they come from a different time or place, and that can help add in the layers for your world building. It's all about those details of the experience. So the E in Realitycraft, experience. Why are you creating this experience again? What is the call to play or the call to action? Is there an invitation? Are you sort of welcoming people into something? And what feeling does that invitation evoke, right? You want to put yourself into the avatar shoes in some cases, or the embodiment of the participants you're inviting in to be in community with, right? Whether it's an experience, a game, a shared event, or some other sort of asynchronous as well. We're going to skip through the music videos for now. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time for all of that. But when you're thinking about experience design, you're thinking about a vibe, right? And making sure that the mood kind of fits the mode and the experience you want people to have. And that could mean blending things in ways that feel foreign, or that might mean borrowing heavily from the real world or from some fictional future in order to create something that feels both authentic, but maybe familiar enough, because maybe that doesn't look like a portal from any specific movie, but I understand that I'm supposed to go through this type of doorway because this looks like a doorway to another world. So if you're thinking about, how to create an experience that is maybe a little bit out of the box or different, many of those aspects of world building are about the details. And this is, again, where image generation, these are from Midjourney, can come really in handy, because you can use those for the walls, the little things on the desk. You can create artifacts that are unique to your world. Those artifacts are often the sorts of things that people cherish. If you can give it to them as a gift, or you can give them some token, that becomes something that bonds people together. It's a form of social capital. So whether you're thinking about, how to create the jewel of your dreams or the jewel box kitchen of your dreams, you're thinking about maybe how to sort of bend light in new ways. These are all sort of tools in your generative media toolbox. And so I want you thinking broadly about building the right generative media toolbox for your work, because some of you might be only within an open source ecosystem. Some of you might need to do things that are safe for education, for all ages. Some of you can only work in very specific ways behind firewalls. And so I want you thinking broadly about the tools, going to places like futuretools.io to find the right tool for you, but also thinking ethically about those choices and making sure that you're making choices that are going to work for you long term. So what are some of those generative tools and what do they deliver? This is a small list of the tools that I use on a weekly basis. Most of them I've used in this talk as well. So I wanted you to get a sense of what each of those tools are and why you might want to use them. Some of them are quite accessible, some of them you will have to pay for. So, asking. Now, so much of the rub and the concern with generative media has been because much of it has been sourced without consent or without attribution. And so, when you are thinking about designing a new generative media experience, I want you thinking broadly and at every specific step about consent. And this is consent for the assets in your world or how you're attributing them to the original artist in some cases, but also thinking about consent in your character design. If you are basing it on a real person, in your voice design, right? As we have generative voice tools, don't necessarily think that it's okay to create a deep fake, right? There are real considerations, and that might not be even lawful where you live. So, these are really important questions when you're going through the process. Ask for consent if you're going to use any likeness of a real human being. And same with your participants. Ask for consent if you're ever going to share their data. Otherwise, do not share their data with anyone. And be very clear about where the data is going and how it's coming into your systems, right? That is good data hygiene that your community will appreciate. So, is this model or tool the right one for this project? These are important considerations because, again, not every tool is right for every job. And then, will this interaction, will this experience create risk or concern for the end user? Am I asking people to reveal too much about themselves in the process? And is my interaction design appropriate for my audience? So these are all important questions when you're going through, because obviously we work in 4D, right? We're working in XR, and we get to know a lot about a character. So these people that we are working with, right? We have a lot of information that can identify them, could also put them at risk. With especially communities at risk, marginalized populations, I want you to be extremely careful about how you are using all of this information and also what you store and what you share with others. This is going to be vitally important a little bit later because we're going to talk about portals between WebXR worlds. And we need to be very mindful about where the data is going. So, listening. This is where interaction, it's a loop, it's an iterative loop. Give time for testing. That's user experience design, testing and interaction. Is your experience working, right? Even from a prototype stage, you can test, and you can do this in a WebXR space. I'll show you this a little bit later on one example. I want you to listen very carefully to the people you are inviting in. That's your participants, your communities, your players, your team, your collaborators. Are they finding what we're doing useful? Are they getting something out of it? Is it beneficial, or is it boring, right? Your people, the people around you, might not have the best examples or might not necessarily be thinking thoroughly about things like boredom. So it's really good to test with a wide variety of people, maybe young and old or from different backgrounds. Again, these are all sort of normal practices within other industries, but making sure that we do really good sort of prototype testing as well as end user product testing all the way through our process, and engaging ongoing inquiry with our teams and partners to make sure we're doing the right work at the right time in ways that are appropriate for our research goals or for our communities. This is vitally important. We're going to talk a little bit about the sort of magic tools, the in painting and out painting, and all of the ways that you can do world building based on these kinds of generative building blocks, because a 3D asset or a character design, all of these are obviously parts of a larger library to a world. And you might be building thousands of assets like this little, character where I was trying to dress her up and see what she might do. I don't love that character, right? I don't love how those clothes turned out, but I didn't know until I really tried it out. So this is where, again, testing, especially even in the early phases of your prototyping, there are more and more tools where you can do that relatively quickly, even with a generator right on the body or right in the environment. So this is a generative web-based tool called Simulacra, where you can generate the flooring, the walls. You can try lots of different prompting generators. I believe it's based on Stable Diffusion. And you can kind of see what things might look like in a sample room. Now, this is really lightweight and fun, but it's also a great way to get people sort of thinking maybe a little bit bigger about how things might come together or be completely unique and surreal and fun. So another tool that you might want to try out if you haven't already is called Blockade Labs. I have a cold demo that's a little bit longer. It's maybe 7 or 8 minutes. That's on my website. So I'm going to turn down the volume here, but I wanted you to just see how quick it can be. Basically, you're prompting an image the same way you would prompt an image in a tool like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion. But in this case, at Blockade Labs, when you prompt, you are getting a 360 skybox. You can make that realistic. There are different art styles you can tap into. And there are coming up for the professional users, those who pay for it, they have editing tools. So you can go in and really paint the 360, the skyboxes you might need to build these really beautiful and unique immersive experiences. So in this case, I went and created some worlds of gems and I wanted to see what they look like. And I did this a few times. So I created interior spaces as well as exterior spaces. And it's really fun to try those kinds of tools out and just see what they do for you. So this is from example from Blockade Labs, and the URL is skybox.blockadelabs.com. They're a relatively new company, but using very similar generative ideas to create something that can be extremely useful for the XR builder who's trying to do maybe test 10 different backgrounds very quickly to see if that's going to work for you. All of this adds up to a broader library of concept ideation. And in some cases, you might end up with thousands of images. You're then maybe going to take them into a training model and create what, when we talk about a training model, it could be something like, I'm going to give you 50 images of my ideal kitchen and then let you generate infinite images of that same ideal kitchen so that I have all of the images I'm looking for. Same in character design. And there are really great tools that are specific to the gaming industry now. There's I'm losing the name, but Scenario specifically, Scenario will work with you on whether it's world design or character design and creating those training models. So when you are designing the world, you are obviously getting to a place where not just the assets have to be designed, but the interactions, the what is actually happening here? What are we going to do? What is the sense of play or discovery? How are we engaging people? And what are people able to maybe take away from that, right? Whether that's an event or a participatory media play, a design contest, or a game, something that gives people a reason to come back. Because generally when you build a cool XR experience, you don't just want people to come once and then never come back. It's really good to think broadly about the community and how they're being welcomed, but then also how they're being welcomed back to experiment with you or to iterate with you in creating something new. That can look like a design contest and getting those design ideas out for the perfect kitchen, maybe trying something completely new. That could look like fine art. And I've done this in museums as well. We redo generative media on the fly with groups in the museum. And then we project it up and people are able to see their generative works right on the wall of the museum, right next to all of the other works as well. So these are really interesting ways in which a concept can go from sort of these stages of development into something that can be produced or realized, or at least, become a meme and sent out on social media. Thinking about not just the playfulness, but also what is inherently maybe funny or interesting about the world you're creating. Animals wearing clothes is a little bit funny, but there's a lot of different sort of simple ways you can use juxtaposition, for example. The sort of elements of surrealism play very well with generative media. So you can give people a slightly different reality where cats always wear kimonos and live in a temple. Reflection and inquiry, because at the end of the day, I want you to then, as you're generating these works, stop, go back, look at what you love, look at what other people are responding to with some sort of emotional response, and then work from the places that are meaningful, that seem to actually be evoking an emotion that you want to head toward, that are connected to the reason you're creating that work. That could be in realism, that can be in absolute fiction. It doesn't matter. Try a new terrain. And this, again, I want you thinking big and broad. Maybe change the sky, make it a whole different color that it's never been before, right? The earth, the terra, the land in a virtual space is not firm. It's never going to be firm. So you get to play with that, right? That's a sculptural tool. And whether it's a skybox or a 3D asset, you can think of those things as things that can be molded and experimented with. And in new worlds, we're starting to see where you can just speak those things into existence on the fly with your friends, right? So the next generation of virtual spaces might be things that we're all prompting through our voices in real time together. We're already starting to see those worlds come to life. So I want you thinking big and broad, try wildly new things in your prompts craft, and it will help you maybe create something that's unique or that people want to talk about, because creating a whole new world is actually kind of hard. It's something that, we don't really think about how hard it is until we try to do it. So it sometimes helps to start with maybe just something that makes you smile or laugh. When I'm experimenting or maybe trying a new tool for the first time, especially an animated tool, I will have a cat ride a bicycle. And this cat, I have an orange and white cat. So I'll say, hey, I want an orange and white cat riding a bicycle. And every tool tries to translate that differently because it's something that it hasn't seen exactly. And it's trying to figure out, well, do I put paws on the pedals? And as you try to animate something like this, it becomes very bizarre and often not very useful, right? Because things like rigging, up to this point, you would have to go through and rig all the different aspects of that character. So this is a new tool that's coming called Animate Anything, which would let you take any 3D asset and then auto rig it so that you could then make that cat actually ride the bike in your world. These are the sorts of missing link kinds of multimodal tools that we have been moving toward, not just for 3D assets and being able, in this case, to auto rig a character. This is going to create an armature for that character, and then you can go ahead and begin to animate that character in your world. So this is a really fun way to begin thinking about speeding up your production design process. Obviously, rigging and animation is one of those most time-consuming elements if you're creating new characters for your world. Animals, wide variety of vehicles, all sorts of things can be done there as well. So there are these emerging tools that give people a greater sense of satisfaction in a relatively fast way, right? Instead of taking 50 hours to create a character and rig it and get it ready in the animating tool, that can happen in a matter of a few minutes or maybe an hour. So when you're thinking about how to maybe approach bringing these into your process, look for the big sensory wins. And that can be any type of media. That can be in sound and music. That can be obviously in the visual design. But think broadly about using all of the senses at your disposal. And think broadly about delight, awe, wonder, and what is maybe unique, maybe is something that you haven't seen before that you want to see, because that's what will often keep people coming back. Consider the flow states of your participants. This is one that those who are in gaming and in sports, especially esports, you really want to think about whether your WebXR experience is unlocking a way in which people can collaborate more effectively together. And this can even be as simple as meditation. One of my very first virtual worlds happened to be a 3D environment in Second Life with lots of crystals where people could go and meditate. And I would come in all times of the day and night, and people I had never met would just be meditating in my home. And so you can create those kinds of spaces in WebXR that give people a sense of peacefulness or just a sense of place, that give people a sense of delight, or maybe just take them to some place that they've never been before. So those are the sorts of, little delight triggers that you can begin to push the buttons of for your audience and for your community. So that takes us through the reality part. Now we're going to go to production, the craft of it. And we're going to talk about those characters and the elements of world design that might need to go from maybe your curated concepts or your collection of art and then go into full production. This is an example of that. I've been working with the XR Guild to build a new guild hall and library. Now, this is a place for the global XR industry to come for research and discovery, for events, and to be able to come together and learn new things. And as we are building this hall, I started this in Second Life. I started this image in Midjourney, specifically on an old image I had built in Second Life maybe 15 years ago, mixed with things like the Lotus Temple and a couple of other ideas. We then began to iterate on those ideas, and then I sent it to an architect. And we took those ideas into 3D design so that we could begin to realize this building. Now, we are still in design and development on this. We'll be able to open it up to you in a few months. So I'm looking forward to all of these pieces coming together. But I wanted to show you a little bit of how we go through that process from first ideation into then giving it to the architect to do those mock-ups. And now we are in hubs where we are taking each of those stained glass windows and each of those portals and each of those library assets to make sure they're going to work with our chatbots and with our librarians in the Guildhall and library. So that's how the sort of aspects of the world design might come together. But character design is obviously a big part of that, because most of our WebXR experiences either involve some sort of avatar or human embodiment, or maybe a chatbot or a character that is being encountered, an agent in the space. So we often develop agents. Specifically, agents are able to do some of the work of a chatbot and maybe access different layers of information and then give it back to the public. So these are, in some cases, like our WebXR librarians. Each of us have different approaches to character design, and I don't want to, necessarily dictate how you approach these things, but I want you to think about these questions. Are your characters reflecting your vision and your design? Are you able to explore something new, maybe a new way of being or a new embodiment? What creative embodiments can you empower, right? So what could open up if you try something completely new, maybe mixing art styles or working in collaboration with new communities? So I often start with a place of like portraiture and finding an art style that I like, and then going into character design and really thinking about, okay, how is this person going to evolve? And then I'm thinking about the aspects of realness and relatability. So whether I'm trying to do something that is actually photorealistic or I'm trying to create a character that is wildly non-human, I'm trying to think about authenticity, relatability. Is this character expressing itself well? And is it expressing my intentions and goals? Is it expressing the community's intentions and goals? And does it speak to the community well? And is it relatable for my participants? And that can be anyone under the sun. So at the end of the day, I want a character that feels like maybe a friendly panda or any number of characters. Obviously, characters like worlds can change. We don't have to be one static thing. And this is where the tools of animation and even volumetric and 3D can start to come into play, along with those large language models, the chatbots. And I'm not going to go into too much detail here into using things like ChatGPT or Claude, Bing. There's lots and lots of large language models. There are also open source language models out there. And there are tools. You could go to poe.com, for example, and make your own chatbot and train it to do the kinds of inquiry that you're looking to do. This is a great way to prototype if you're trying to build a new character. But in some cases, you might want to build multiple characters and then give them voice as well. So we'll talk just a little bit about that. As you're thinking about these assets and how they come together, what value are you creating with all of those assets? How can each asset or character or what they're holding or their clothes reflect part of a unique vision? That can be, obviously a brand experience, but that could also be something as simple as connecting people to their favorite team or their favorite group, right? Creating a cohesive reality that people can participate in together so that they feel like they're having a shared experience. So that can look like a wide variety of things: posters, books, print, stickers. I often make stickers of my virtual worlds just because people want them, they ask for them. But it's also in how we end up storyboarding. It's how we end up creating story that lets people into the world and lets them have a role in it, right? Because so much of the XR experience is an embodied, full immersive experience, right? You want everyone to feel like they're getting a seat at the table together. So when you're thinking about those training models, there are lots of different ways to approach this. I will absolutely help you do that work. I work with film teams, I work with XR teams, I work with experience design teams, I even work with product design teams. And so if you're thinking about these ideas and you need a little bit more hand-holding to get from your idea all the way to a realized fandom, I can sit with you and go step by step through that process. So from going from fiction to that idea to into a fandom that people want to be a part of. Is this a world that people want to get lost in, right? Have you created something unique and interesting? Is your story gamer experience expressing itself fully? Are there little details you could add? Because remember, in generative image, that can be very quick to create a new aspect for your world, a new artifact that gives people a sense of connection. Can you maybe storyboard that experience fully for the team using the assets you already have? Because often an XR world just starts with a bunch of images in a Google Doc or something so that we're beginning to have a conversation. And then are you engaging active participation and iteration? Remember, it's an iterative process where we're constantly evolving. None of these worlds are WebXR spaces. They typically aren't very static. They're often full of dynamic data. A library is full of resources that come from all over the world. Those are constantly going to change. So, am I engaging a design process that lets other people participate in it together? There are ways that you can participate right now in some of these processes, and I want to invite you to participate in a couple of things specifically. So I help lead a group called Metaverse. We are currently working on designing portals between our WebXR worlds. And this is, again, where generative design sometimes means that we can prototype the connections between worlds and what those portals might look like relatively quickly. Now, we've been doing this in volumetric as well. So if you were interested in Metaversal, we also did a play last year at AWE. And I hope that you'll check out some of the previous portal crawls. Those are also on YouTube. You are always welcome. Anyone in the XR industry is welcome to participate in the Metaversal portal crawls. And if you have an XR platform, especially a web XR platform that you're thinking might connect well to other worlds, let's meet, let's have a conversation about what that can look like together. Because again, we are creating shared realities. They are often not discrete. And as we begin to think about the future of the 3D web, it is all about how our experiences are connected and how we give people a connected and cohesive experience that they can share together. So we're wrapping up, and this is the end, the T of the Realitycraft, the transformation that you, as a creator, as a designer, as a builder, are going to activate, right? So every experience has the capacity to change someone, and you have no idea what's going to change until you do it. And so I want you thinking sort of broadly about the kinds of change that you want to seed, because a little thing, a simple detail can have a radical experience shift for someone else. And you can take that as far as you want. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways that immersive and interactive experiences create transformational experiences, both through giving people agency, but also giving people a shift in perspective. Again, the generative tools support that, but in the end of the day, it's up to the designers and the creators to use those tools in tandem with their own vision, with their own sense of discovery and how we share discovery. So making sure that all the lessons we learn are apparent and easy to access. And I also want you thinking about whether the interactive and immersive experiences or products you're building can inform others in our industry. Please keep sharing your lessons. If you have great research, we'd like to see it in the XR Guild library in the future so that no matter who you are around the world, we can all learn from each other. So, in wrapping up, I am Evo. You can find me at evo.ist. On YouTube, you can find me at Evo Realitycraft, and that's where I also have some generative video workshops. And on a couple of other social sites like Threads, you can find me at Amoration, Instagram as well. And then I mentioned my band, and that's Oracles, but also the book is Promptcraft. Promptcraft, the second edition, will be coming in a few months. If you buy the first book and reach out to me, I will send you the PDF of the new edition when it's out. So please feel free to stay in touch with me. I do also offer workshops fairly often. There will be a new round of workshops announced soon for December and January, so I'm excited to share those with you. But for now, please, I would love it if you come and check out our band. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the volume just a little bit here. And let's see if it lets me play. Nope, it's not going to let me play that. So you can go to YouTube on your own time and find that for you. I look forward to hearing how you want to collaborate in the future, and I would love to answer your questions. Please feel free to drop a comment on YouTube. I may not get to all of your questions now, obviously, but I would love to answer those after. So thanks for joining me here. I'm Evo Haining at Realitycraft, and I hope that you will help me find new ways to help make your realities real together. Oh, I think you're muted. Hello.
Thank you so much, Evo. That was amazing. I think, yeah, prompt craft plus the whole world building and the sort of focus that you said that, some questions that you need to ask yourselves to kind of reinvent or kind of realize what you want.
That's right.
Conceptualizing any product, the use of I don't know, you call it algo mods, but probably the algorithm modifiers.
Yes.
And there are quite a lot of things that you spoke about, like scene design, design ideas, fine arts. I think that was one of my favorite parts, when you are in a museum and you can actually really project what you want to see, how you want to feel. um, and go through these stages of concept. And also, I think I like the part of the humor where the cats wear the kimonos. You add characteristics and animations to animals. I think that was really, really, really one of my favorite parts out there. All the way, storytelling, making it a bit more powerful, and though it's an imaginative world, it's still very close to the real world. So thank you so much. I think, what's the hardest part you find in this, or what is the greatest challenge, if not daily? What do you face, have you
Mm.
faced so far?
Well, I am so lucky that I get to work with the coolest people on the planet, and I feel so lucky to collaborate with them. So when I look at the teams I'm working with, for example, one new project that we announced this week is the Virtual Worlds Museum. That's virtualworlds.museum. And that team just needs a couple of $1,000s to finish building a beautiful museum in WebXR so that we can begin spotlighting the artistry of this entire community. I think there's a lot of opportunities where maybe just connecting a partner here or there, an in-kind donation, little things mean a lot when you're talking about communities that are building often on their own dime in their own time, and they're trying to do a lot with a little. So the more you can either share your friends' work, invite people to see your friends' work, share projects that you think are interesting, the Virtual Worlds Museum coming up, the XR Guild Hall, or even fun projects like the band or the things that you're working on. I hope that you'll get out there and share more of your virtual experiences with people who maybe aren't seeing it, because they don't understand how real it is until you invite them in. So it often starts with friends asking friends and saying, hey, come over for happy hour. We're going to do Virtual Worlds Museum today, and we're just going to hang out and go exploring. So thinking about how you invite other people into even physical experiences can open doors for people you would never expect.
Thank you so much once again. I wish would like to have you for more, but better kept next time. See you. Have a great day and a nice weekend ahead.
Thank
Bye.
you.